then we'll get on with a great day of training. So clear your heads, clear your minds. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity this morning to come together. We thank you that you brought Mr. Behr out here safely. We ask that you would just be with us today, that we could just glean from his knowledge and his experience, so that way we could be better athletes, but most importantly, just better men and women of character. We just thank you for all these things in your name. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Without further ado, Mr. RandyBehr. Y'all give him a clap.
So, good morning, and I'm not going to talk about my bio or anything like that, but I do want to just kind of put it all in perspective that I was very blessed. My mother was a special ed school teacher for 20-some years. My father was my first coach and a firefighter and a Marine. So that's why I turned out this way. It's nothing special about me. I had some very influential teachers and coaches. And God, grew up as a Roman Catholic in the Midwest. So had a lot of people in my corner, and I just got lucky. Worked a little bit and at the right place at the right time. So my experience is about 32 years, and I'm kind of proud of that in terms of not of a boldness, but I feel like I've got a very diverse background. Working for the Army, I now work for the Air Force, I worked for the Navy, I worked at the collegiate setting, had an opportunity to work at the NFL, worked at a couple other countries, coaching their Olympic teams, universities, high schools, teaching, coaching, so athletic directors. So I feel like I've got a breadth of experience, and I'm not doing that to be boastful, but I feel like I really understand what it takes to build successful teams. And so not only are we going to do the physical, but there's more than physical, right? How many of you guys have watched a game and you're like, how in the world did that team win? Anyone? Happens all the time, right? And so that's why I've never bet. All these guys bet their parlays and that, like, that's why we play the game on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, right? Anything can happen. So the way I like to say is the best team won on that day. And it's not just physical. So as I've gotten older and been in this industry and profession for so long, I know that it's physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's a lot of variables thrown into one. And there's no accident. So I wanted to start with that. And secondly, Josh, I appreciate you and your staff and all your players welcoming me into your home. Because this is not just a gym. This is a church, and this is a special place for everyone. So I'm very honored, and you also welcomed Denise and I into your house. So thank you. The outline, the way it's going to go today is I don't want to just regurgitate information back at you guys, because most of it you probably already heard, and you'll forget it. But I want you guys to give me real life scenarios and questions, and we're going to solve some of these issues, guys, today as a team, if that's okay. So the first one I want to go over is leadership. Okay? Anyone have an idea of what leadership is? I'm sure we have. Okay, sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And we all have different, and I'm just going to read the Webster just to kind of set the precedent. Put my old man specs here. Leadership as the office or position of a leader, the capacity to lead, and the act or instance of leading. Okay, much ado about nothing, right? This is a little bit different. Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. Okay, so that's the Webster's dictionary, and there's a lot of things wrapped up. But let's keep that in the back of your mind. But does anyone have any other ideas of what a leader looks like, what a leader acts like, what is a leader? Anyone? It could be coaches, it can be players. Yes, sir. Or running back, right? Fullback. Running back. Oh, I love that. I love that. You learned it earlier, but it took me later years to learn that a great leader is a servant. I'm serving my employees. That's awesome. Good for you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Nathan, you want to add? No? Okay. So it seems like you get it, right? Leading by action. You're here to serve other people. Okay. Yes, sir.
I think one of the definitions you read, sir, was part of that was to get them to do something that they want to do, not that you're cattle prodding them to do
that's a good thing. We talked about tricking, I guess we're going to tell them all our tricks. Tricking our athletes and our students to doing what we want, giving them options, and they're all our options, but they're all good ones. And that's a great thing. Would you agree with me? Who can be a leader? This is where it starts to get a little bit, I wouldn't say foggy, but who can be a leader? Do you have to be Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or the best quarterback on the team? Who can be a leader? Yes, sir.
Puts in the most effort.
Pardon?
Guy who puts in the most effort. That's
Yeah.
60 pounds.
You're right. It can be anyone, right? It doesn't have to be the all-American. It doesn't have to be the best player on the team. Anyone can be a leader. Does a leader have to be someone that's the rah-rah? We spoke about that, always cheering, getting people motivated. What do you guys think? No, absolutely not. I mean, I've had leaders on my team, they didn't say anything, but I knew when they did say something, we were all ears like, oh shit, Greg just said something. He never talks about nothing, okay? So what we're trying to do here is I'm going to start you with a cliche, is ordinary people do extraordinary things. And I think that translates to teams. Ordinary teams do extraordinary things, right? You've all seen those movies, the basketball movie with Carter and in the football. There was nothing really special about those teams, was there? Other than they were tight, they believed in each other, they believed in the coach, right? So that's what I really want to get at, is if we can develop 15, 20, how many folks on the team?
20 to 30-ish.
Okay, so if we can develop 20 or manufacture 20 to 30 leaders, do you think that would be successful, translate to the season? You bet you it would, right? Now, not everyone has to be that supreme leader, but if we're all leading ourselves and we're all setting an example, it makes your coaches' jobs a little bit easier, right? It makes your teammates, right? The center over here, Will? No, Nathan. Nathan. So we got two names. Okay. So if you know that the guard next to you is always going to be where he's supposed to, he's always going to execute, and he's always going to adjust to what's in front of him, that makes your job easier. You know that you don't have to pick him up, right? You know that you can do what your job is. So that's what we're going to try to do today, is work on some things of how we develop leaders. And the more leaders we develop, okay, the better off we're going to be. Now, most traditional literature shows that in order to get the most out of your abilities, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, is you have to be playing or representing, or how can I say this? Playing or representing for something bigger than yourself, right? Whether it's your father, whether it's your school, whether it's your community, whether it's the state, whether it's your country, right? I mean, if you ask Josh, that's why military organizations, all of them are so strong, and that's their brand, right? We're defending the United States of America. And it's pretty hard not to get jazzed up and have your hair standing up, right? Right? It's not about Josh, it's not about his unit, it's about defending the United States of America, representing, and not just defending, just representing. So, and it's the same for a school, right? When you walk down those hallways, you should puff your chest a little bit, right? Like, hey, I'm representing our school. No hallway, I'm sorry. On the field. But I'm representing my school. I'm representing my father, Josh. I'm representing Augusta. Like, that's pretty big. Would you guys agree with me? That's pretty big. And that's when we start getting extraordinary things out of our athletes. Not like, hey, Randy, I want to be all, that's good. I got to have my internal goals. Like, hey, Randy wants to be the best cornerback in the league. Those are great. But when I start every day knowing that I need to make my father proud, I need to make my family proud, I need to make my school, my community, that's when great big things happen, right? Because it's easy for Randy to say, oh, geez, well, I think I'm just going to stay home today. I'm not going to go to the weight room. Because it's just me. I'm only letting myself down. But when you have others, that's when great things. So Has anyone put that in perspective? Have any of you thought about it that way? Yes, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a good sized center. Yeah, that's a tall center for a high school kid, yeah, okay. So have anyone seen that in perspective of light, or is that just something you've heard about? Do any of you walk around like, hey, I need to make sure that I'm representing my father's name, my mother, my school, my community? Anyone? Your faith? Yeah, that's all right, I admit it.
Yeah, but this group here is more about their faith.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Okay, and that's enlightening, right? When you know that you can't let someone down, again, that's when big things happen. Okay, so that's what we really want to focus on, how we can do that, and I want it to be very interactive. So I want you guys to throw out some things that you've come across, things that you've come across that maybe, well, how can I be a leader in this case? So does anyone want to start off with a question? Yes, sir.
One thing I did this year that I realized it was a really bad thing was I tried to be a leader that I wasn't. I tried to be hoorah, and that's just not me. Like, you guys have heard me, I did some bad speeches. So.
We love you anyways.
Honestly. Well, you know what? You know what's really, I mean, I respect that. Again, there's not too many young folks like yourself that first of all recognize what your abilities are, recognize what your parameters are, and will admit their weaknesses. Most adults have troubles with that, so I commend you for saying that, and that's being a leader. So now I can assume that each and every one of them that heard you say, I'm not good at that, you've earned their respect without doing anything really abnormal. So, and we talked about it. You don't have to be that person. Again, I've had folks on my work squads, on my team squads, I didn't say anything. But when I looked over there, they were always working, they were always doing something positive, they were always picking someone up, physically, mentally, so that's totally okay. That's totally okay. Are there any rah-rahs here? We got anyone that's just like, hey, slow down here a little bit?
Coach Brody.
Coach Brody? And that's
why right now for some reason.
hey, every good team, I mean, think about it. Think about whether you're baseball, football, basketball, soccer, rugby, track. Every team has different types of leaders, right? I mean, some are the boisterous, some are just lead by example. I mean, if you ever look at, well, it's changing a little bit, but back in the day, most quarterbacks didn't say anything on an NFL team. I can hardly remember the Joe Montanas, the Dan Marinos. You never heard them say anything. But I bet you, in the locker room or off, they were setting the standard, right? I'm sure they weren't yelling at folks. They were setting the standard by work ethic, by looking at video. So, and linebackers, in my experience, tend to be a little bit more boisterous, right? The Brian Urlachers, the Lawrence Taylors, the Ray Lewis, they tend to be a little bit more boisterous, but I think that's characteristic driven. You have to be a madman to be a linebacker in football. You're asked to do extraordinary things. So again, skill guys, we tend to open our mouths and we're chatting all the time. Linemen are very cerebral. Almost every team I've been on, linemen, they don't say anything, but when they say it, I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? So find what's comfortable for you and be yourself, right? Your team, your coaches, they will know if you try to be someone you're not, right? You guys know when you're walking around the mall, you're like, dude, shut up, that's not you, right? Maybe you don't say shut up, but you understand what I'm talking about, right? Are there any silent leaders here, aside from, okay. Anyone little rah-rah? Brody, are you the only one? And that's good. I mean, when it's appropriate. Any other rah-rahs? Nate? Nate, you're kind of quiet, huh? Yeah, I can tell. Okay. So, you know, maybe just talking about this, maybe this will help you define how you are as a leader. Maybe some of you will continue to be silent or rah-rah, or some of you might be like, man, I want to be more boisterous. So let it come naturally, okay? Any other questions in regards to leaders? We're going to transition into kind of expectations. Any other? Yes, sir.
So, you know, as being a leader, and I know we had it this year, like, I'll use Sam because I know he'll be okay with it. Sam's one of our captains, and yet he missed the end of the season with an injury. So how can I, as a leader, either as a team, player, coach, even just in life, I've got these leadership expectations, but yet I'm dealing with adversity myself. How does that something that I can still be a positive leader on my team while still dealing with these things I'm overcoming?
That's a great question, and that's a tough one because you see it at the young level all the way up to the pros. I had that situation as I was a center fielder in baseball, and I broke my pelvis in baseball. I swung and snapped like a wishbone. Extremely painful, and it was very hurtful. And my intentions were go to play at ASU. Had some looks there back in the '80s, and that was kind of like the premier program. That instantly stopped, and so I was in a dilemma. I really was in a dilemma because I did not want to go to the games. I did not. It was hard. And to this day, it's still hard to even talk about it. But I really had to dig deep. You know, I had the other coaches around me and my parents. I had to dig deep. I still went to the games, but it was incredibly hard. Not to cheer on people, just to be in that atmosphere. So, but I think it resonated with the players. I never went back and talked to my old coaches or old friends, but I think it resonated with them that there was no way I was playing that whole season. I was on crutches. I was in extreme mental and physical pain, but I was still there for them. So, again, I think just physically being there, again, you don't have to say, hey, I'm here to support. Just being there, I think sets a standard, and it is going to be hard. You know, for me, every day I sat there at the games and the practice, you know, I thought about rehabbing. For me, that's the mental stage that I went in, like, I'm going to come back a bigger, better version of RandyBehr. So, great question. And I didn't say much. Maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have. I don't know what the right answer was, but I was there. For me, that was, I felt that's, at the time, that's all emotionally I could do. So, did that answer? Yeah. And I think the team will respond to that when they see someone that's injured that's still supporting. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Or comments or examples? How about the young cats over there? I never met the young guys over there.
Another Brody.
Another Brody? Brody? Nice to meet you, Brody. How are you? What position you play, buddy? Okay, very nice. Very nice. Who's your favorite quarterback? Yeah. Okay, good. I don't have favorites either. I have a bunch of new ones. Andrew, receiver?
Not really. I play defensive end.
Okay, wow. You got some long levers, though. He's going to grow. How old are you?
I'm 14.
Okay, he's going to grow, huh? I can see his feet and his line. Okay, good, good. So you got to get off the ball quick, and you got to maintain the edge, right?
Yes.
And then get out to the
Maintain.
perimeter. Oh, one more I missed, kids. Levitt? Leviticus, so you're the guy that's injured, right? So it's hard showing up going, man, I wish I could play, right? Right? So use this as motivation, like, boy, I'm going to come back a better version, and I appreciate what this game brings to me physically and emotionally and mentally. So, good. Do we want to move on? Do we have any more leadership? Ladies? Parents? Coaches?
They're all leaders in their own way.
Yeah, and that's
They all influence each other. It's positive.
and that's what I want to get. We stack it together, right? If you got 15 leaders on a team, I guarantee you will be a good football team. I don't know if you win state. I don't know if you go undefeated, but I guarantee you will have a successful program if you have a lot of leaders, 100%. And you don't have to be 6'4", 220 pounds. Guarantee in high school sports, probably even in college, maybe even in the pros, you will be successful with a bunch of leaders. Okay, so this is one of my favorite. I taught in inner city California for many years, and I was one of the only white coaches in our school, and teaching and coaching. And I recall all my other coaches having all these problems with parents and the community and players, and I never really had that. And I attested to a mentor of mine, an old Vietnam veteran pilot, Vern Von Sydow, who played for Steve Belichick, Bill Belichick's dad, at Naval Academy, and he played for Roger Staubach. And he taught me all these things about what Belichick was doing before there was Bill Belichick. So, and one of the things was you have to lay out the expectations and the parameters of everyone on your team. And it totally makes sense. It's big business, right? It's business. That's what we do in the Army, right? You lay out everyone's role, and if everyone does their role, we're going to be pretty darn good, right? And so one of the things I would do, I would bring all the parents in, and we talk about what their role is. And we'll talk to the parents later. And it wasn't like I was trying to tell them to be a parent. By no means. I always started off, you are the parent, I am not, because I did not want folks getting on with it. For players, I think oftentimes we lose sight of that. You know, we always think it's about me, and it's about what can I do. And so I just kind of want to open it up. What do you think your role is as a player, guy? Just blurt out some stuff. Yes, sir. Specific job responsibilities. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Anyone else? How about the new guy? What's your name, sir? Yeah. Isaiah. Nice to meet you, Isaiah. What do you think is one of your responsibilities on a football team? Just anything. As a player.
I guess like when I have to anchor the line, like make sure everybody around me is on assignment and stuff.
I like that. And that's a center. Most people don't know. You know this. You guys know this. But undoubtedly, the linemen, almost every team are always the smartest guys out there. I mean, if you look and check their GPA, it's not always, but if you check their GPA and went across, they are always, their job responsibility. That's the only position on the football field I've never coached. I've trained a lot and I've worked individually, but never had an official capacity. Not in my eyes, 100%. Coaching linemen is offensive linemen is the most difficult part of football. There are so many exceptions to rules, you know, big on big, down block, oh no, zone blocking, down blocking, reach blocking. There are so many different options. So my tap is my head is always tipped to linemen, always. Okay. So good. You're right. You're the leader, right? You're the leader, and the quarterback looks to you to get the head shake, right? Like everything's set, right? Big responsibility, right? Okay. Anything else? Anything bigger? Let's look bigger, guys. Let's look macro. You guys are very cerebral, I can tell. What else is your... Yes, sir. Yeah. And yeah, do what you're told. I'm not a big fan. But yes, to listen to your elders, listen to your coach, for sure. What else?
I guess considering what you said earlier would be your representation of your team, so you gotta act right, responsibly, respectfully.
I like that. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, of course we need to maintain our block. We need to be in the right formation. We need to catch the ball. We need to make the right cut as a running back, the right read. But now we're getting to something. Anyone want to add anything else? What else? Expectations.
Showing up on time, ready to go, so you can make each other better.
Yeah, but I'm the best player on the team, coach. Why would I need to be on time?
Why do you gotta be on time? So the young buck doesn't beat you and become better than you.
Exactly, right? How have you ever seen, it happens on every team, low all the way to top, but how does that make you feel when someone shows up late? Especially if they're kind of good. I don't think you really worry about what they're not good, but if they're good, how does that make you feel? Yeah, you're like, why does this guy, right, just because he's good at some little sport game, catching a ball, he can show up late? Kind of disrespectful, right? So not just you, the whole team, right? Okay. And of course, there's exceptions to the rules, right? I don't want to hold to, but that's a great one. That's a great. What else? Just common things. Let's not even think about football. What else is the expectation for a football player? Pardon?
Not giving up.
Not giving up, absolutely. Even when it's hard? Okay, okay. Good, good, good. Anyone else? Any coaches want to add?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
How does each of these traits that we just talked about, these things that build a team, how do you think that's going to apply to your ability to work once you get into the workforce? And be a good teammate on the job site.
Amen. And we didn't really even talk about this, and maybe we can, but I can tell you, my closest friends are the guys that I played football. I was 4 sport high school and 3 in college, and the relationship I built with football players was totally different than my basketball, baseball, track. I still talk to them to this day. I mean, over 40 years of friendship. We don't remember our records. We don't remember any of the plays, but we remember Kevin putting his butt pad on in the front, and we remember our coach for breaking every clipboard he ever had. So you're right, those are strong, and I remember the work ethic, the teamwork, the accountability. So you're 100% right. So if we can lay out the specific details of accountability and expectations, you're right, be on time. In my eyes, what I've seen from successful teams is they're on time, right? They're a unit, right? They're a unit. All the successful teams I've seen, they're eating lunch together. Doesn't mean the whole team has it, but they eat as a group, right? They hang out on the weekends together. They study together. They're a unit. I think that's a huge expectation that I would look for. I could probably look around, especially in high school, and I think I could predict which teams were probably pretty good. Not even seeing them on the field, just by talking to them, the way they carry themselves, walking around the school, asking their teachers, and just looking, observing what you do after school. I think I could really probably pinpoint, not how many games you won, but whether or not successful, non-successful. So, expectation, unity, on time, teamwork. I would say I expect all of you to be good students. I don't need 4.0, but show up, be respectful, and give it your best. Right? I'm not going to put a GPA on that, but I think that would be an expectation that I would put on my players. I would always also add that be good at home. Right? I know we're not perfect, and I was kind of a wild child myself, and I look back, I'm like, God, I was a knucklehead. But be a good student and be a good child for your son, or as a son, right? Be a good child for your mother and father. That's an expectation. A good teammate, right? Hardworking. What about if there's something you disagree with? How do we approach it? Because it's going to happen. I know when I was like, man, that doesn't make sense. How do we approach that? Yeah, when you think it's appropriate. You think during practice is appropriate to go ask the coach why we're doing that? I would agree with you. I would totally agree with you. Most coaches, and once we start getting the coaches, we'll break out our parameters, do not have a problem with the why. I know we're in the why, but I really did, when we transitioned to this job, I really was excited about it, because now I'm not leading sheep. I'm leading young men and women that want to know why I'm doing this, right? So for me, it was exciting. Like, I get to explain the science of it and the art. Coaching is science and art blended, right? So for me, I enjoyed it, but I also told my parents and players that the time to ask me is not during practice. Parents, you're not allowed to come on the field and address me. That's not appropriate. You can do it in my office. You can call me up at midnight on a Monday night and yell at me and tell me I'm the dumbest coach ever. I'm fine with that. But you're not allowed to come in my space on the basketball court, on the basketball field. And we do it nicely. I don't do it defiantly. And I just kind of tell them, like, look, do you think it's appropriate for me to come into your work site when you screw something up and berate you in front of your coworkers? Probably not. No one wants that, right? So most coaches will accept that. And in the appropriate time, your coach will probably tell you, hey, if you have a question, stay after practice. I'll explain it to you. Okay? And again, coaches appreciate that, and your players will appreciate that you're not a problem child on the field. Okay? Does that make sense? Any other expectations you think that as a player?
Discipline.
Yeah, you can follow the rules. How about a leader? Do you think being a leader would be an expectation? I think so. Being a leader to you. Like, I'm not expecting a rah-rah, or I'm not expecting that, but be the leader that you can be. Okay? Any other questions on expectations?
Mr. Behr,
Yes.
I think being a good opponent as well is a good expectation to have of players in the sense that, during the competition, I'm going to actually give 100% of my effort to make myself better and my opponent better. But I'm also going to, I'll give you 100%. I'm going to give you the best half I can give you, then I'm going to help you.
I love a good sportsmanship, right? That's important. And wherever it goes for you, there's different types of sportsmanship, but I think you're right. I think you're right. And as you get older and you graduate, a lot of these kids across town are going to be your coworkers and going to be your friends. And gosh, how embarrassing would that be that you did a chop block or a backside, beheaded someone or clotheslined them? How embarrassed would you be 5 years later you're working with this person as a coworker? Would that be kind of uncomfortable and embarrassing? Yeah. Now if it's a clean hit, no problem. You're both probably laughing like, hey, remember Josh when I decleated you? You're like, yeah, you were bigger, faster, stronger. But if it's a cheap shot, just think about that. And especially think about if you hurt this individual and their career was over, and I use career loosely, but their high school career was finished, or worst case scenario, maybe they had a serious injury. No one wants that on their conscience, right? Nor should anyone have that. So, sportsmen, yeah. And at the end of the game, it is a game, right? It is a game. And maybe I'm a little different, but over the years, I'm a Bears fan because I grew up in the Midwest. But I've lived all over the world. When I was living in San Diego, I was a Charger fan. I was a San Diego State fan. I was a Padre fan. I followed all of that. And you know what I really enjoyed? People used to boo at me, but Barry Bonds would come in town from the Giants, and there was a huge rivalry, the Padres and the Giants. And Barry Bonds would hit 2 home runs, intentional walk, steal second, throw a guy out at home. And, I'm sitting in my seat, and I jump up. I'm like, and the San Diego Padre fans are looking at me like, what are you doing? That's the enemy. And I was like, no, he's mastered his craft, right? It's entertainment. How can you not respect the skill of another player? Because really, this is just a game. We're just rolling around some balls and bats. So, and that's how I look at it. At the end of the game, and linemen are very good at this too. Do you ever go up to the lineman after the game and kind of talk? Yeah, because that's a special bond between linemen. I was a skill guy, and we just run around with the ball, and we're all fancy. But you guys really have a special bond inside with those linemen. You're intimately, all day, all night, close to these folks.
That's really
hitting.
why we have these guys, because then they would be kissing too.
And you're hitting each other. That's a special bond, right? It's a special bond, and then you guys walk away, and you're all friends. So, yeah, being a good sportsman, it doesn't mean you're soft. And whatever you need to do, I had guys that would never talk to these players before the game, and I had other friends that would talk to them. Whatever's comfortable for you, right? If you need to detach yourself in pre-game until after the game, that's fine. Or if you need to premeditate, like this is your enemy and I'm going to beat my enemy, that's fine. But just remember, at the end of the day, you're all trying to do something good for yourself, for your community, for your program. So that's a great one. Anyone else? How are you, sir? Welcome. Do you have anything to add? We're talking about expectations of a player and what we expect from them in terms of from the coaches, from the school, from the community. Anything else? Mothers, we have one mother. Is there anything else, expectation? You expect them to come home and do their chores?
Not Nathan.
Not Nate. Oh, dang. But your stardom stops when you leave that football field, when you come home and mom tells you to do your chores and dad says, get up and make your bed or cut the grass or whatever it may be, right? So we got to be humble too. I think you got to be humble. I mean, look at some of the best players in the world, and I hate to use this example, but I think it is a good example. I'm not a huge fan. I'm more of a Bill Belichick fan. Tom Brady. I mean, think about it. He's been doing this for 21 years. If you watch him, does it look like he's been doing it for 21 years? Do you see how hard he is on himself? I bet you he's the most critical coach on himself. It's not these other coaches. You see the expectation that he has on himself? Does he have to do that? Man, he's won like everything there is to do. But to me, that's very impressive, regardless whether you like him or not, is his work ethic. And if you looked at him, you would still think he's a rookie with a chip on his shoulder, right? So, yes, ma'am.
As a mom, for my child or anybody else's child, if you make a mistake or if you lose, don't give up. In the game, don't quit on your team. Don't say I'm not doing it anymore just because you didn't tackle that person or make that hit or you're down by 10. Don't give up.
I would agree with you. So the expectation is, as a winner, right? And it doesn't even have to be in a sport. A winner does not give up. I can tell you, I've been on this earth long enough, 52 years, that I've been knocked down about 876,000 times, right? Like, adversity is going to happen, right? I can ask all of you specific, it's going to happen. Some bad things are going to happen. You're probably going to lose loved ones, maybe lose a job. I'm sure you're going to lose some girlfriends along the way, and the world's going to end. It doesn't. Trust me, it doesn't. But adversity is huge, right? Adversity is huge, and I would say that's resiliency is probably a top 2 or 3 characteristics. How do you deal with negative, right?
I think that we have more, we don't have a single guy that's sitting here today that quit during a game. I think we have kind of an opposite problem about that humbleness, and that is when some of y'all make a mistake, you start to overcompensate and get in your own heads, whether it's snapping the ball or missing coverage or missing a block. You're not the only one I'm looking at, young man. But at some point, you got to correct yourself like Tom Brady does, supposedly. Not so sure about that. But get out of your own head, get back to fundamentals, and move on to the next play.
You're totally right. And easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. But I think it's a learned skill, guys. Right? It's a learned skill. And I'm sure you know that friend of yours that always, oh man, I'm so dumb, man, I failed the test. I missed the block, I missed the tackle. You know that person? I'm sure it happens in every high school. That's you. So it's a learned trait, you know, and that's where a leader can come by, right? Nate can come by and, hey, look, I did it the play before. Don't worry about it. But it's imperative that we call it having amnesia, right? Have a short-term memory, right? That play is over. I'm now the greatest center in the world. Even though I missed the easiest block, I am now the best tackle that ever was. I'm the Jonathan Ogden. I'm the Tom Brady. I'm the Mahomes. I'm the Eddie George. I'm the whatever. So you have to have short-term amnesia, and it's not arrogance. You just have to overcome that. Because if you don't, you're not doing you any favors, and you're not doing your team, right? So it's a learned trait. Now, it doesn't mean that you forget about it. What I mean is, at the end of the game, or the next day, whenever you guys do your films, or you take note of it and say, oh man, I took a poor angle. I didn't make the block because he was better than I was, my angle as the guard was too flat. I should have opened up a little bit more. That's when you take stock in your play, but not during the game. Absolutely not. Forget about it. It's over and move forward. Because you are going to make lots of mistakes. We try to minimize them. So that's a great one. But that's learn. You got to keep learning, and you got to have good coaches around you and good players that see that and come up, right? You see it on the field all the time, right? Someone makes a bad play. What's the first thing that happens? The other players are coming over and bringing them up. Very important. Very important. Any other questions in expectations or leaders? Or anything in general? Yes, sir.
I know since I noticed that I struggle with that, I made a mistake. I work very hard to like, okay, goal fishing, we're goal fishing. I have a few guys that are just the same as me, they're like, okay, I made a mistake, sheet, and then they let it go on their head and make multiple mistakes.
Yeah, our brain is very dangerous. So, again, one, condition yourself. I would probably journal. And I don't mean, cliche, get in your journal, the sky is blue. I mean, just write your thoughts out after the game. Hey, I felt like I played well. I felt like I made this mistake. I felt like I could have did this better. I wish I would have reacted this way when this happened. Write stuff down. Almost all successful people write things down. I bet you if you ask your mom and dad, you're always writing down. You're writing down groceries, your to-do list, what are you doing at work, right? I do it all the time. I have a long list when I show up to work. I know what I'm doing. So I think journaling is good. And if you want to call it goal-oriented or objectives, nothing wrong with that. And that's where your teammates should come in. Because sometimes being by yourself all the time is not good either. Solitude is great, but being by yourself all the time, our brain tells us some things that we necessarily don't want to hear. Okay? So when you see that happening, maybe you go talk to a coach. Maybe you talk to your brother. Maybe you talk to your sister. Maybe you talk to a teammate. And just verbalize it. Okay? Does that make sense? Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Welcome. Do you have anything to add? I'm not putting anyone on the spot.
No, I'm here to listen.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else, just football related, guys? Because I know football is tough. Football is tough physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Are there anything that you guys struggle with? Yeah. I would have had 300 yards rushing if you guys would have blocked for me. That's only one of the bad things I hate about team sport. And over the years, I've really started to respect individual sports, gymnastics, boxing, wrestling, combatives, swimming, diving. I've really had a fascination with, because they don't get to blame anyone. The only person they can blame is themselves. But, and understood. So, yeah, it would be easy to go back to the lineman or the receiver. Man, how did you drop that ball? Or the quarterback, man, I was wide open. Or how did you miss that tackle? That would be very easy. But do you think that it is something that would be positive for? Probably not. How do you think that would feel if you went back and gave him an earlobe? What do you think that would feel like? Probably not good, right? It doesn't mean that you can't go talk to him and say, hey, Josh, I need you to make that block. Josh, I need you to make that tackle. Right? Rick, you got to catch the ball. It's all about presentation. I don't think there's anything wrong of interacting with you, but when you start making it personal, like, hey, why are you so terrible? Or, God, you're a dumb fill in the blank. That's when it's a problem, right? Don't criticize the person, be critical of the action. Does that make sense? And I think all people would react. I think constructive criticism, most people. But I would also lend an ear. Be careful who you're saying. Some folks are a little bit more sensitive than others, right? You know some thick-skinned folks that you could bark at them all day long. And I know the coaches know who they can bark at. And there's other folks, again, this is where the art comes in. Okay? It's not about being equal, it's all about being fair. I know some guys, believe it or not, that's not my coaching style, but I knew some guys just love getting yelled at, and I could never figure out. They're like, Coach, I love when you yell at me. And I'm like, I hate it. So I would have to manufacture it, I would have to make it up, and I would have to yell at them. I'd turn around and start laughing, like, what in the world? Is this kid weird? And other kids would just have to sit down and say, hey, look, this is what I need you to do. And other kids, I would have to draw on the chalkboard. So know who you're dealing with, right? Who's the toughest mentally? We got some real tough mental kids. Raise your hand if you think you're pretty tough mentally. Okay.
They're all humble.
So for you, if someone came up, you play D end or
Quarterback.
Wow. Good. Biggest kid on the team. I like this. Okay. Wow. Okay. So could you handle someone come up and say, man, why can't you give me the ball on time? Could you handle that? Okay. At what point would you turn on? At what point would you turn on and be like, geez, that's a little too much?
Probably, they do it too much in a way.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's also your responsibility to kind of lay that expectation down. Hey, Nate, I got this. I understood. Take ownership, take accountability. I got you next time. And that should be a sign for, okay, that's enough. Okay? Others might be like, hey, Nate, you gotta do better next time. Move on. So that's knowing your players. And the more time you spend with them, eating lunch with them, going to movies, you'll get to know how sensitive they are. What do they respond to? Right? So I think that's also a responsibility of you as a player. Okay. Anything else? Anything related to, so we can pivot now. We've covered leadership, expectation. You want to cover anything else in regards to football for players? Want to talk about goals? Talk about goals, because that's always a tough one in high school. I know you all have goals, right? Do you write them down? Where do you put them? You put them on the refrigerator, put them on your mirror, put them in your bathroom, put them in your bedroom? Do you think, pardon?
Put them in my brain.
Okay, and that's good. Do you think there would be any advantage or positive of putting them somewhere where you see them every day? You walk past the mirror, your mirror in your bathroom, it says, I will be a better player. I will be in all conference. I will make 8 tackles this game. Do you think there's any advantage of doing that?
It's like really fancy first. It's like, saying that, look at that, and really tone that, focus on it. Other people don't get, okay, I agree with that. Don't encourage them every day.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But I totally agree with you, but I would also say that by verbalizing and then putting them out, they make them more tangible, right? Because I could look here and say, hey, I want to be a millionaire and I want to own 18 planes. And the chances of it having it, of accomplishment, just by having it in my brain are probably slim to zero. But when I start putting concrete lines of effort and how I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to work harder, I'm going to get this degree, I'm going to get this certification, I'm going to mentor from this person, in 5 years I will be here. That's when big things happen. Because we can't go from skinny little 110-pound kid to being an all-state running back, right? It doesn't happen. You know, we have to put goals, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Okay? Do any of you talk about your goals to your coaches? Like, because they have to be smart, right? They have to be specific. I can't say, hey, I want to be a great football player. Well, what is a great football player? Is it all conference? Is it all state? Is it, I'm going to go get a scholarship at a Division I, or I'm going to play D3 or D2, I'm going to play the NFL? Because I can tell you, yeah, I was a good football player, but I knew I was never going to play in the NFL. And I never had any dreams of playing in the NFL. I knew it was not a realistic goal. I wanted to play Division III college football, which is very low level, but for me, and my size and my skill level, was acceptable. And it was exciting for me because I got to play. So it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, right? I need to be able to put some metrics on that, and it should be attainable, right? It can't be something like, I will be better than Tom Brady. Not that it can't happen, but you have to be realistic with yourself. If you're 5'5" and you want to be the greatest NFL quarterback, not that it can't be done, but maybe that's not attainable. I'm not trying to kill anyone's goals, okay? So, and it's got to be time in this. So it's got to be, hey, I will lose 5 pounds of body composition in 2 months, right? It's got to be time. It's got to be time. You got to put a time frame on it, right? Call them smart goals. So, do any of you talk to the coaches or your parents about your goals, whether or not they seem realistic or doable? Anyone? Nice. And, you know, he probably has some pretty good ideas. You know, us old people have done the same silly things that you guys have done, and we've been there. Okay, what about coaches? You ever went to your coach and said, hey coach, you know, what are my abilities? What do you think my strengths are? What do you think my weaknesses are? Coaches love doing that. We don't get enough of that. All we're doing here is X's and O's, but we don't get enough kids that come to us and say, hey, how do I go to college? Or how do I get this job? Or, you know, how do I find a beautiful lady? Or how do I join the military? We don't get enough of that. So seek out your coaches and your parents and ask them these questions, right? And they'll lay it out to you very honestly, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions about goals? Yes, Josh.
Just kind of backtrack a little bit and reiterate, you know, the writing down, I mean, having it in your head is great, but I think writing it down helps with accountability, and certainly talking to other people helps with accountability, because if you've got things that you have, you know, like a bathroom mirror type thing, and, you know, as you get older, life happens, things challenge you for your time, but if you have a goal that's written on your mirror, you walk by that, come home from work, and it's, you know, I want to work out 5 days a week, or I want to get back in shape, those kind of things, that's on the mirror. You come in, you change, instead of changing into loud pants or with sofa, you see that on the mirror, and it holds you accountable to say, I'm going to put my shorts on and go to the gym. And the same with, you know, obviously as I, you know, my accountability partner is my wife, but sharing those goals, you know, with my wife and some of my goals with my son helps them hold me accountable and say, you know, didn't you say? So when they see me not working towards my goal over a period of time, I've taken a day off spot. But, you know, you take a week off, it's been a couple of weeks, you're not moving that direction anymore. Having that person that you talk to about that to say, weren't you trying to do this? Weren't you trying to accomplish this? Isn't the direction you were trying to go? And kind of help and spur you along. So having it in your head, that's a you thing, but once you put it down on paper, once you talk to people, they can help you get there. It's not just a you thing anymore, it's a team thing, it's an us thing.
Absolutely correct. And that kind of goes back, it's bigger than yourself, right? It's bigger than yourself, and you have a responsibility to yourself, to your family, to your school, to your community, to your state, to your country. So that's a great one. Yes, sir.
Probably put in more neuroscience related. It makes it go from the emotional to the frontal cortex to the center of the brain. It's like you can't contain emotions successfully, but you can contain logic successfully.
Agree. 100%. I mean, anything we do starts here, really, neurobiommechanically. If I want to lift my knee, I had to tell myself to lift my knee, even though those are mundane actions, but you're right, it starts in the brain, neuroscience, for sure. Anything football related, guys? We got a couple minutes before we transition into parents. Oh, we're a couple minutes behind, but we got a couple minutes. Anything football related? What if you were the coach? Oh, go ahead.
The opposite of training. I like just go in as soon as football season's over. So I may do all go from workout one to the shoulder. Hopefully I figure Tuesday I'm like physical therapy, so finally start going all out. What would you say the best for doing like off season?
And we're going to talk about it later. We're going to talk and do some things. So again, my schooling, my formal education, my experience as a multi-sport, my research, U.S. sports, and even more so European. European has a great youth, far better than I believe that the U.S. Mold of specialization. But cross-training, multi-sport, is all research supports, is probably the best thing you can probably do. Focusing on a sport, one sport, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, year round, is going to lend itself to a lot of overuse. And again, I'm not telling you you can't do it, but I'm saying in my experience, if you want to develop a comprehensive athlete, right, that moves in all different planes, that has a lot of different skills, and they complement each other, do multi-sport. I can give you a prime example. I was coaching a junior college in San Diego, a big junior college. Junior college in California are big, over 42,000 kids. And a lot of our kids went, I don't even know where they went, but a lot of them went to D1. A ton of my players went to D1. I was a defensive back coach. All over the place. I mean, we had Bobby Bowden was hiding kids out here in California, in San Diego at this JC to get them to go down to Florida State, and all over the country. USC, we had kids. But I can tell you, I used to recruit a lot of basketball players. And a lot of really good basketball players that weren't good enough to play D1. But I knew what basketball players brought to the secondary. I wanted them to play safety for them. They knew depth perception, right? Think about it, basketball. Long passes down the court, and you have to go up and get the ball right at the highest point. So I knew that basketball players would be really good on a football field, seeing the whole play, how it unfolds. So I would go to a lot of these parents, and they're like, well, my son, yeah, he played football, but he wasn't that great. I was like, yeah, but he has a lot more potential, right? I'll teach him how to go get that silly little ball. He has the skills that I really need. Perception, getting the ball at the highest point, long arms, long levers, and the ability to fly around the field. So that's an example I use for multi-sport. And that's a lot of them. I mean, linemen, track and field, the shot. I mean, the skill guys, all skill guys, I believe, should be running track in the off season. You know, baseball players translate to, I think, football pretty good. So there's a lot of combinations that I think build on each other's skills. So we'll talk more specifically, but I think those are some great things that you could do. I could see you running track, short space, or throwing. Okay, that's good. That's good. Handwork, footwork, body control, of course. So they will complement each other. The Russians thought 17 to 19 years old was where they started to specialize. And if you look back, some of their athletics, of course, they had some chemicals to help them in the 80s. But take that away, and they had some amazing gymnasts and track and field athletes in the 80s. Their systems were awesome. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying if you hate another game, but what I'm telling you, this is what I tell parents is, hey, look, the chances of your kid going to play NFL are very slim. Do you want to take this kid that enjoys baseball or track or football and force feed football on him when he enjoys baseball or track and field? Take that enjoyment away from them, or him or her? And I say not. The best friends I ever met were playing sports. So we'll talk more about that. So we'll wrap that up unless there's no more questions. You can stay here, guys. Kids, you can take, but our next segment will be on parents, and we'll get real detailed on that. But you guys can take a little break if you want, or they can stay. It's up to you. But we'll take a couple minute break.